Good day everyone, and welcome to the Wreath of Snakes Extreme, the fourth and final installment of Stormblood's Saga of the Four Lords, featuring Seiryu in his prime form. Wreath of Snakes Extreme follows a slightly different structure compared to previous trials. As opposed to introducing an entirely new set of abilities between phases, Seiryu prefers to gradually add mechanics to his existing actions as the fight progresses. But before we begin, it's important to first assign each DPS to a tank or a healer, forming 4 pairs in total, with tank pairs normally being designated to the northern corners. Each player should also keep their respective side of the platform in mind, as subsequent mechanics will require the party to split in opposite directions. Once all pairs have been assigned and markers have been placed, it's finally time for us to bring the fight to the Azure Dragon.
Beg not for mercy.
Upon engaging the boss, Seiryu will introduce us to the 5th element, a party-wide attack that deals moderate damage and will reoccur at regular intervals throughout the fight. Followed by Kujikiri, a checker pattern AoE that is also accompanied by explosion markers on 4 random players. Keep an eye out for this special symbol, indicating that this mechanic will gain additional properties and behave differently in later stages of the fight. Continuing in sequence, Seiryu will teleport to the farthest party member and begin casting Onmyo's Sigil, a delayed attack that mirrors the sigil shown, or in this case, a point-blank AoE that strikes all nearby players. And finally, we have Curse Keeper. This mechanic places a curse on the main tank that detonates on the rest of the party for the same amount of damage the tank takes. To avoid empowering the curse, a tank swap will be necessary to prevent any additional damage from landing on the cursed player, including the hard-hitting tank buster that follows. Once the curse dissipates, Seiryu will enter his transition phase, becoming untargetable and summoning a number of different minions in sequence. Firstly, we have 3 charging enemies, 2 of which will tether themselves to DPS who should point them away from the rest of the party, and the third one targeting a healer with a proximity marker, who should stack with all the remaining players as far away from it as possible. While keeping the respective sides of the platform in mind, tanks should be ready to intercept the 2 upcoming focus tethers and point them away while the rest of the party remains safely positioned near the center. Lastly, Seiryu will summon a number of targetable enemies, the biggest of which must always have its stone skin ability silenced before it completes, a task normally assigned to both tanks due to their excellent interject action. It's important to note that these enemies will also explode upon dying, prompting players to stagger their kills so as to prevent overlapping damage, or risk suffering casualties.
Grant me the strength to smite mine enemies!
Upon completing his ritual, Seiryu will take us to a new arena, this time surrounded by stormy waters that players should avoid and quickly move out of by using sprint. In the meantime, the boss will introduce us to Summon Shiki, a wildcard mechanic utilized to summon environmental hazards. The first of which will be a group of giant snakes from either the west or the east, eventually charging the platform and pushing players a significant distance. In its second execution, Summon Shiki will call forth a giant humanoid, which, after a short period of time, will begin slamming both sides of the platform in an alternating fashion. Players must accompany Seiryu in his dance of mechanics until the 3rd instance of Summon Shiki, which will once again spawn charging snakes on either side of the platform and coincide with the humanoid's final slam in the center. Shortly after, the boss will begin casting Forbidden Arts, targeting each healer with a line stacking mechanic that can be mitigated by the entire party, but only in this first case. At this point, Seiryu will draw out the full potential of his Aramitama, empowering many of his previous abilities and granting them additional properties.
I must have more! Oh, Aramitama!
The first example being Onmyo's Sigil, which now combines both the point-blank and donut AoEs in sequence, as indicated by the order in which the sigils appear. Followed by the empowered Kujikiri, now striking twice in an alternating pattern, and prompting players to quickly sidestep between safe spots. Shortly after, Seiryu will execute Serpent Ascending, marking either all DPS or both tanks and healers with explosion markers, and summon 4 meteor circles evenly distributed across the platform. While navigating around the many ground AoEs, all 4 unmarked players must each claim their respective meteor circle, according to their respective assigned positions from Phase 1. Continuing in sequence, Seiryu will cast Forbidden Arts, once again targeting each healer with a line stacking mechanic. In its empowered version, however, Forbidden Arts will also apply Vulnerability, prompting players to split into 2 separate groups according to their respective sides of the platform. The empowered version of Curse Keeper has no mechanical difference from its regular counterpart, the only exception being that it will occur twice, forcing 2 tank swaps in total and resulting in 2 tank busters. And lastly, Seiryu will execute the final variation of Summon Shiki, this time spawning the same untargetable enemies from his transition phase, and combining them with Onmyo's Sigil. Just like before, tanks should use their respective corners as reference to intercept the focus tethers of both enemies and point them away from the rest of the party. The following tether mechanics should be handled the same way they were before, with DPS pointing theirs away, while the rest of the party stacks as far away as possible.
No! I will not lose! I cannot!
At this point, you have seen all the mechanics this fight has to offer, with Seiryu repeating and combining his previous mechanics until the party quells his Primal Rage.